Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another NMaaS related Infoshare. So today we are focusing on a brand new use case that we have come up with for NMaaS and how to use what we've developed for NMaaS and the original use case to support other cases. In this case, organizing virtual laboratories for hands-on educational exercises. My name is Łukasz Łopatowski. I work in PSNC Poland, and today I'm sharing the presentation with Vojdan Kjorveziroski from University of Skopje, North Macedonia. One sec. We will start off with only brief introduction to NMaaS for those of you that might not be familiar with the platform yet, and then we will switch to Vojdan, and he will explain in details what virtual labs are in practice and how we achieved this and how we implemented this concept. We will also present a series of pre-recorded videos showcasing how this concept works in practice. Then I will explain how you can actually run your own virtual lab using either NMaaS or already existing NMaaS infrastructure, or deploy it on your own infrastructure, and we'll conclude with some conclusions and future plans. So in one sentence, NMaaS is an open source multi-tenant cloud-based platform for on-demand deployment of applications in the as said, in a cloud environment. So basically, we are offering the NMaaS users the possibility to deploy in an easy way through using a web portal applications on top of a Kubernetes based infrastructure, and then have remote access to those applications running in the cloud. So as mentioned, at the very bottom of the platform, we are relying on on Kubernetes. That is also depicted here on the picture on the right. And inside Kubernetes, we are setting up dedicated tenant environments for each of our user or customer or institution that is using NMaaS. And those tenant environments are called domains. And in scope of NMaaS, they are isolated environments where users can securely install their applications, and the applications do not interact with each other. Also, the applications from one domain cannot be accessed by users from a different domain, and so on. We are also leveraging software-based VPNs in two scenarios. So one case, as depicted on the diagram, is to be able to set up a VPN connection between the applications that are running in the user domain within Kubernetes to the some equipment that should be monitored and that is located in user premises. So of course, in case of NMaaS, we are monitoring some infrastructure, some types of devices or services from some remote location that is, of course, located in a cloud environment. And in order to set up a secure connectivity between those over the internet, we are using software-based VPNs, either OpenVPN or WireGuard. But we are also supporting cases in which the endpoints to be monitored are already available directly from the public internet, and in this case we don't need the VPN to be set up. So this type of VPN is called site-to-site VPN, and this is for let's say a secure data communication network. We have a different type of VPNs that are used by client users themselves, installed on their local computers in order to be able to access the web interface of the applications that are running in the cloud, so that only them have access to their applications running on NMaaS. Of course, at its core, NMaaS allows to deploy applications, and we have already a wide and easily extendable catalog of applications that we support. As mentioned before, we are exposing the web-based user interface, and we make sure that the application deployment process is as straightforward from a user perspective as possible. So user is guided through the whole process, and along the way, user is also asked to provide some basic set of configuration parameters that would pre-configure the application instance with some data tailored for user needs. Worth mentioning is that we are also, once the application is running, we are also employing an automated GitOps-based configuration management process that eases the process of reconfiguring the running application at the runtime. So as mentioned, we should make a little bit of distinction between the original use case for which the NMaaS was initially developed, and this is the network management use case, which was aimed at supporting national research and education networks and their end institutions in monitoring their infrastructures. And this was what we were focusing from the very beginning. We have been operating and offering a production service within the GÉANT project. The service is already running since 2019. The catalog of applications and on this production service already includes over 30 applications, and by now we have already over 30 domains. So then currently we are supporting already a variety of users, including NRENs, research and development institutions, and research projects. We are also supporting some set of other GÉANT project teams, for example, including the RARE team and GP4L monitoring using the applications deployed on NMaaS. And currently we are also focusing in parallel on a new use case named Virtual Labs. This is since we have recognized that the NMaaS platform is actually very versatile and can be well suited to serve other use cases as well. Of course, Vojdan will explain more about what virtual laboratory is in practice. I will just mention that the work on this concept has started beginning this year. We have already added some set of applications that are specifically tailored for this type of use case, and that overall at this stage, this is we are at the pilot phase. Okay, let me now switch over to Vojdan.
Okay. So hello everyone. Yes, my name is Vojdan Kjorveziroski, and continuing the discussion on virtual lab, as Łukasz mentioned, so far in the past 4 years, NMaaS has been transformed to a robust orchestration solution that should not be limited only to network management. The type of applications that can be added to the catalog can be versatile, and this got us thinking how we can use NMaaS in different subject areas as well. One idea that came naturally is to use it for organizing hands-on exercises, because most of the team members in the task are also involved to some capacity in teaching. So when it comes to the organization of such hands-on exercises, this is a very relevant scenario both for formal learning in the context of universities, high schools, and so on, but also in the informal learning aspect. So for example, some self-paced online courses or MOOCs, massive online courses, and so on. The core idea here is that we can use NMaaS now as a general purpose catalog, which would leverage all of the improvements that have been done over the years. So we'll be using containerization, we'll be using orchestration, and we will also be using the multi-tenancy features that NMaaS already supports. So the question is, what does NMaaS bring to the table, and who are the virtual lab stakeholders in this case? Well, we identified two key stakeholders that we target. On one hand, we have the lab managers. The lab managers are the privileged users who are responsible for organizing the exercises, the virtual lab exercises. Depending on the context, these can be professors, teaching assistants, tutors, course managers, for example, in an informal learning context, or course administrators, and so on. So the term is not relevant. What is relevant is that they are the privileged users who are responsible for organizing the exercises themselves. On the other hand, we have the lab participants, and these are the actors that take part in the exercises on the platform. Depending on the context, again, various terms can be used: students, MOOC participants, trainees, learners, whatever. They are the ones that take part in the exercises organized by the lab managers. So what are the benefits of this approach of repurposing NMaaS and introducing yet another use case scenario? Well, there are benefits for all involved parties. The benefits from the lab manager perspective are that now NMaaS offers an easily reusable infrastructure that can be used across multiple courses in the same institution. So it's no longer the case for the ones organizing the exercises to hunt for relevant resources, do the provisioning themselves, just to organize one single hands-on exercise. And there is also support for various scenarios, and the catalog of potential scenarios for a virtual lab can also easily be extended. And finally, we pay close attention to allow for easy customizability, so that it's possible to create personalized environments for every student, and additionally to be able to create a gamified approach, which we'll be talking about more in some of the later slides. From the perspective of the lab participants, or from the perspective of the students, now the process of deploying an application required for passing a given virtual lab is much simpler. So they do not have to install the application itself locally. They can just deploy it with a couple of clicks, and the whole environment is set up. So now the questions of how and where to run the software required for a given exercise is transformed to how to use the software, which is the most important question when it comes to hands-on exercises. There is also no configuration overhead. The application can be configured as required by the lab manager for each student, and this also leads to increased engagement. When each student has their own environment for doing the exercise, their own instance of the application, they're more free to experiment more. They are not concerned whether they will be breaking something, whether they will have enough resources to run the application locally, and so on. And finally, one thing that's also worth mentioning is that this approach also brings additional discoverability. to extra applications. There is when you have multiple applications in a catalog that can do a similar thing, then the students might be encouraged to try some alternatives and to widen their horizons. So for example, if it's a web programming course and you have multiple databases that they can use for their application, and the deployment of a given database is simply a matter of a couple of clicks, then they can just go for it and try a different experience and compare the solutions. What we are aiming to achieve is to have a catalog and a solution that is not only computer science centric, but to be able to also include applications from different domains in the portfolio, so that the NMaaS as a virtual lab solution can be applicable to other areas as well. So we mentioned what would be the benefits. Now the question is, well, how are we going to realize these benefits? In this context, we'll be talking about the necessary features for accomplishing what has been discussed so far. First and foremost, it's understandable that multi-tenancy is a must. Luckily, NMaaS has multi-tenancy support from the get-go. So in this context, we are using the domains concept, where basically we map a given lab participant to a given domain. There's one-by-one mapping of a lab participant to a domain. And a given domain is simply an environment where a given lab participant can deploy all of the applications that are required for the virtual labs across the courses that they attend. If needed, a given domain can also be shared for multiple users. And in this way, we add more flexibility, for example, for some collaborative assignments where multiple students should work together to finish a given task. In that case, multiple users can be assigned to the same domain. Very importantly, domains are persistent. So each user has a given domain, and the same domain can be used across different semesters, across different courses. Then we have the concept of domain groups, which builds on top of the domains feature, which is a new concept. We'll be explaining this with an example. If NMaaS is used as a virtual labs platform across different courses, each course might have a different set of required applications for completing the virtual lab assignments. We want a robust way of how we can be whitelisting which applications are deployable by which domain. Because, for example, we don't want to give participants access to 30, 40, 50 applications, which can even overwhelm them at first sight when they first log into the catalog. And even some of the applications might be sensitive or dedicated to particular groups. So with the domain groups concept, we can apply application restrictions to particular domains. In the real world, how we are using this during the pilots is we map a given course to a domain group, and then we just whitelist the necessary applications required for completing the virtual labs within that course in the domain group. Any domain that is part of the given domain group will be able to deploy the whitelisted applications. In case, of course, if a given domain is part of multiple domain groups, in reality, this translates to a given student being part of multiple courses using the virtual lab. In that case, the restrictions will be merged with a union operation. So the student will be able to deploy all of the whitelisted applications across all of the domain groups that their domain is part of. And there are also some technical aspects. So for example, in order to be able to use less resources to support more students, we also introduced the possibility of on-demand applications, where idle applications are scaled down or brought down or shut down when not being used. And upon the next access by the student, these are dynamically brought back up again. This is very much the case how students usually do their exercises. So for example, there is a deadline for an exercise that is 1 week long, but the actual completion time, once they sit down and get some time dedicated to working on the exercise, is maybe 1 or 2 hours. So there's no need from the infrastructure perspective to keep the application alive for 7 days when the student would only be using it for 2 hours. We can instead just intercept the initial request to the web application, then block that request until the container is created, and then just continue forwarding the next request to the application. And this takes around 5 to 10 seconds, but it conserves a lot of resources on the infrastructure side. For lab managers, to make the lives easier of lab managers and to make the adoption process seamless of NMaaS, we also support bulk domain creation and bulk application deployments. These features are meant for easy integration with external systems that the universities or other institutions might already be using, such as learning management systems. When organizing a given virtual lab, of course, we will have a list of students who will need to take part in this virtual lab, and this list of students would most likely come from some learning management system. For example, Moodle is a popular choice here. It's possible to export the list of participants for a given virtual lab from Moodle in a CSV file, for example, and then simply import this list into NMaaS. What this would allow is to automatically create the necessary domains for each user, the necessary domain group for the course, and to apply the mapping of which user is part of which domain and which domain is part of which domain group. And this simplifies the deployment process a lot. Another feature, which is also being piloted as we speak, is the feature for bulk application deployments. This is useful if the lab manager would like to use NMaaS for organizing virtual labs, but in a transparent way from the lab participants' perspective. In this way, the lab manager can simply deploy all of the application instances required for conducting the exercise, and then simply provide the participants with access details. In this way, the participants themselves are not required to log into NMaaS, to deploy the applications themselves, and so on. They're not even aware that NMaaS is being used. And finally, currently we are working on some additional automation aspects that would help in the generalized way that VPN profiles are created for each of the students, so that they can have secure connectivity to all of the applications that they have deployed within their domains. So I think that it's enough talking theoretically. I would like to show now NMaaS in practice, what we have discussed so far, so that we can get some hands-on experience. The first thing that I would like to show is how domains can be created in bulk by a given lab manager. This is the NMaaS homepage, and now we'll be logging in as a privileged lab manager. When the lab manager first logs in, they're presented with a list of all of the available applications within that instance because they are a privileged user. To deploy new domains in bulk, the bulk domain deployment functionality can be selected. And now we're presented with an overview of all past bulk deployments, and we can opt to create a new bulk deployment. This is the CSV format that is expected by the platform as an input. And what can be done is, for example, export from a learning management system and do some minor changes. The required fields are the domain name that needs to be created, the username of the user who will be assigned to that domain, the email of the user, and the domain groups that the new domain should be part of. We can use any external editor for editing the CSV file because it's a simple CSV file, so anything works. No matter how we choose to work on the CSV file, at the end of the day, we can just save it and upload it directly to NMaaS, or simply copy and paste the content directly in the text area field. Once we upload the CSV content, all of the required resources will be created. The nice thing is that only the resources which are missing will be created. So for example, if we specify an existing user in the CSV file, but for example, a new domain group, then the user will not, of course, be duplicated, but simply it will be found in the list of existing users and assigned to the new domain group that is missing. So this approach is important so that it can be reapplied multiple times without any destructive changes. Okay. The next step is, of course, after creating the domain groups, to restrict the set of available applications within the domain group. However, first, I would like to show what is the sign-in experience for a new user that has been just registered. So this is a user that has been deployed in bulk, and to access NMaaS, they would have to first reset their password. And this is the password reset flow. Once they have been imported into NMaaS, they will receive an email which they can use to reset their password. Once they reset their password, they can now log in to the portal, and we see that they are presented with a blank page. This is just to demonstrate that if a given domain is not part of a domain group with whitelisted applications, they will not be able to deploy any application whatsoever. So now we context switch to a domain manager, and we will continue the configuration of the domain group, where we'll be whitelisting a couple of applications. We'll be creating a web development scenario where we would like to give the participants an option to set up a remote development environment. For that, we'll need a database management software, for example, Adminer. We'll be needing an SSH server, Bastion NG. We'll see how we'll be using it shortly. We'll need some web application that we can use. In this case, we have selected JuiceShop. We'll be needing a database, relational database, so for example, PostgreSQL, and we'll be needing a development SMTP server that we can use for sending emails. Once the changes are saved, we can context switch again to the lab participant, and now when the lab participant logs in, they'll be presented with all of the apps that they can deploy in their own domain as a result of them being members of the relevant domain group. And now let's see what is the experience when a given lab participant would like to deploy an application. We will be deploying the OWASP JuiceShop application in this case. This is a vulnerable web application that can be used for organizing capture the flag challenges. The user can simply click on the deploy button, enter an arbitrary instance name, and then proceed with the deployment. Depending on the complexity of the application, there might be some additional configuration involved. So to ask the user for a default admin username, password, and so on. In this case, because this application is rather simple, all of the configuration aspects are taken care of by the platform itself. Once the application has been successfully instantiated, the user can access this application. And what we're seeing now on the slide is basically the dynamic feature which allows a given application to be brought back up on demand when it is being accessed. And when it's idle, it will be shut down. So when a given instance is accessed, but the underlying container is shut down, the user will be presented with such a splash screen where they will have to wait a couple of seconds before proceeding. While this loading screen is being shown to the user, in the background, the container is being started. Once the container is started, the user will automatically be redirected to the now online instance. And this is the web application that has been deployed, and it's ready for use by the lab participant. The next feature we will show will be the bulk application deployment from a lab manager perspective. This is the feature that we explained can allow NMaaS to be used in a transparent way from the perspective of the lab participants. So we simply select the application that we would like to deploy in bulk, and then we again paste a CSV file with a slightly different format in this case. We'll need to specify the domain where we would like to instantiate the instance name, its version, and also any additional parameters that we would like to customize for the application. Once this is done, there will be a batch job executed in the background, which will deploy all of the instances. Once they're deployed, the users will get an email message with the access details of how they can access their instances. So there's no manual deployment steps involved. And then the deployed instance behaves as any other instance, but the nice thing is that the deployment process is abstracted away from the lab participants, which can be very useful, for example, for young students that do not have very much experience with application deployment, registration, using platforms for deploying applications, and so on. And finally, this is the final demo video that we would like to show, is how NMaaS can be used for other scenarios as well in the context of a virtual lab. We'll be showing how we can create a complete remote development environment on NMaaS. The first step to achieve this is to deploy a new version of the Bastion container that we have been supporting for some time. This new version is improved so that now the user can dynamically select the username and their SSH key that they would like to use for logging in. However, even though this is an SSH server at the lowest level, we will not be using it for direct SSH connections. Instead, we'll be leveraging a very nice feature of modern editors where we can use, for example, Visual Studio Code or JetBrains Remote Gateway to establish a remote connection to the just now deployed container, to program, to have a local view of the code, but actually to compile and run the code on the remote environment. So what we're seeing now is a local version of the Visual Studio Code editor. We can use the remote plugin that is freely available for Visual Studio Code to connect to our remote instance. Once we have connected to our remote instance, all of the commands that have been executed and now the creation of this new main py file is done on the remote host. The source code as we write it is directly transferred to the remote host, and when we execute it, it's being also executed on the remote host. In the case of compiled languages, the compilation itself would happen on the remote host. This is beneficial because, for example, if NMaaS is hosted on a highly performant infrastructure, the compilation process would also be much faster, and more resources can be dedicated to this process. Taking into account that you can also deploy databases on NMaaS, message queues, and so on, it's easy to see how this can be transformed into a complete development sandbox, for example, for programming courses. And these are the features. Now we'll be talking about how they have been initially beta tested in the real world. So far, we have conducted 2 pilots within the St. Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje, North Macedonia. And we have tackled 2 different subject areas. The first pilot was regarding a cybersecurity course, and the second pilot was regarding an IT service management course. There were 75 lab participants in total across both courses, and we have plans for additional pilots in the near future. For the first pilot, the cybersecurity pilot, we organized a Capture the Flag event, which was based on a vulnerable web application, where each student had their own instance of this vulnerable web application. And once a vulnerability has been found within this personalized instance, the users were presented with a cryptographic flag, which they can then exchange for points. And the grading for these exercises was done in terms of who got the most points. So this also presented some gamification. There's someone who is unmuted. Okay, I think it's okay now. So this also presented a gamification aspect where the students were motivated to get as many points as possible so that they would be higher on the scoreboard. In this case, the vulnerable web application was using the idle application feature, where once the user was not actively accessing the application, it was just scaled down, which allowed us to use the infrastructure for more students than we would have been otherwise able to, thus conserving resources. The other pilot that is currently underway as we speak is a pilot for an IT service management course, where instances of the popular OTRS ticketing system are deployed for the participants of that course. In this case, the instances are deployed in bulk by the lab managers, so that the students don't even know that they're using NMaaS behind the scenes, but the lab managers themselves are using NMaaS for orchestrating the deployment. In this case, the instances are long-lived, meaning that they will have to be up for a number of months, since the instances will be used throughout the duration of the course. And finally, in terms of the virtual lab plans for the future, we plan to support additional use cases. High on our radar is the support for Jupyter Lab, where participants can deploy their own Jupyter Lab instances instead of relying on external cloud services such as Google Colab and so on. And we also plan to further explore the option of including additional vulnerable applications into the catalog to support additional CTF scenarios. Also, we are in the middle of a reorganization for the managed instance of NMaaS. And in the near future, we hope to also support additional runtime environments where the virtual app applications can be executed. This means that we will not only be limited to containers as we are now, but we also plan to support the virtual machines as well, which would allow us to introduce many additional scenarios which are simply not possible with containers. In terms of the Jupyter Lab use case that I have mentioned, should we get the resources, we also plan to explore how we can move into scientific computing, basically, where we are able to pass through to individual instances dedicated compute hardware, such as graphics cards and so on, which would make the use of Jupyter notebooks much more enticing. All of this is only possible with a strong community around NMaaS, where additional users of the virtual app solution would also contribute their own applications, but not only limited to applications, but also it would be very beneficial if we can also share the learning materials for the labs themselves, the learning materials that are presented for the users, for the lab participants, so that the whole description of the lab scenario is also possible. In that case, the work of lab managers throughout Europe and the world would be much simpler, where they can just simply exchange both the applications, which they can then deploy on their own NMaaS instances and organize a particular virtual lab, but also the course materials, which they can improve on and then share with their students. So this is a wrap regarding the practical aspects of virtual lab. Now Łukasz will show you how you can get all that we have talked about in your own environment. Łukasz, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you see my screen. Yes, thank you, Vojdan, for this comprehensive explanation and demonstration of how virtual labs work in practice. Yeah, so now a few words about how you can actually start your journey with virtual labs, either for testing purposes or actually piloting some courses using NMaaS. So it is very important to note that actually the NMaaS, let's say, comes in two flavors. So on one hand, we are talking about the GÉANT NMaaS service that we call a managed service that is hosted on a central infrastructure provided by the GÉANT project, and it is managed by a dedicated NMaaS team, also working within the GÉANT project. And already mentioned, we have the production instance that is running at nmaas.eu, but this instance is meant and tailored only for this network management use case, and its purpose to serve this use case. In case of hosting virtual labs, we had to deploy a dedicated infrastructure, dedicated NMaaS instance, to which the access is currently still limited and restricted only to the pilots that are being run over there. But of course, in case you're interested in using this managed NMaaS instance, please feel free to contact us. It's still currently it is still a little bit limited in terms of infrastructure capacity and performance, and this is why it is only meant for hosting pilots. But I will later on I will share some plans how we plan to enhance the infrastructure and how to move forward with this with hosting many production like virtual labs over there. So this was the managed NMaaS service, and then there's the other option I was mentioning that we are of course encouraging everyone to explore, is the option for running the self-hosted instance of NMaaS and using it for running let's say virtual laboratories on your own, serving specifically your purpose. And to this end, we have the two options available. So in order just to have some first initial hands-on experience on NMaaS and how it operates in practice, we are providing some guidelines for setting up a local evaluation environment just on your local computer. And of course, the other option is to, in case you already have some infrastructure in place and Kubernetes installed, you can use the other guide that we are providing, and you can set up a full-fledged NMaaS instance on top of a real Kubernetes cluster. And of course, this option is suitable for hosting virtual lab instances. So as mentioned, we have a let's say new and enhanced documentation website where you can find more information about all the NMaaS related concepts, and including guidelines for setting up NMaaS on your own, but also guidelines on how to use the NMaaS managed service from the user perspective and administrator perspective and so on. And of course, I would like to strongly emphasize that we are here to support you along the way, either when you would like to use the NMaaS central instance for hosting your virtual lab, or of course use the current production service to set up some monitoring tools for your infrastructure, and also for hosting your own instance of NMaaS. We are here to help. And just a few words of conclusion and plans for the future. So currently NMaaS should be recognized as a versatile orchestration platform, so not only limited to one given use case as it was up to beginning of this year. So it's suitable for hosting a very diverse set of applications. So either the network management applications that we are already support a bunch of those, but we have in order to facilitate the pilot courses organized at the university, we have also integrated a set of new applications, as was mentioned by Vojdan. It is very important to note that the whole software stack is open sourced and is available on GitHub. Regarding the virtual lab development and deployments, so as you've heard, we have some pilots underway currently. We already have some interests from other parties and institutions involved, for now involved in the NMaaS development. So those that were already aware of the existence of this new virtual lab use case. So from Greece, Croatia, Serbia, and Poland. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, we are currently actively working on upgrading the infrastructure that is hosting the production NMaaS instance, and now the NMaaS instance that will be purposed for hosting virtual lab. Yeah, once the upgrade is completed, then we should be able to provide a real production grade virtual lab instances that could be used by all interested parties. And of course, finally, just to make this clear, that you are all welcome to share your ideas about the use of NMaaS, either related with either of those two use cases that we already have, but also you can come up with a new use case if you have something in mind already. Please share this information. Maybe you are already using NMaaS or start using NMaaS in the near future, and you find something missing, either some features in the web portal or maybe some applications that you would like to see in the catalog. Please reach out to us. Yeah, and of course, we wouldn't like to stop at a single new use case, and we will be exploring other use cases as well. So if you have any ideas, please share. And yeah, I believe this is all from let's say the purely presentation part of the Infoshare, and we are open to answer any of your questions.
Łukasz, there is a question in the chat. Is authentication with GÉANT available? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. It is available for accessing the web portal, the NMaaS web portal that was mentioned. We are working on some possibility to upgrade to some latest version of the AAI mechanisms that are offered by the project. And also, maybe Vojdan can comment on this. We have been exploring some other options also to use SSO or some kind of federated authentication to also enable access for lab students and so on. Is that true, Vojdan?
Yes, so in a nutshell, GÉANT login is possible both for the lab managers and the lab participants. The problem is that as it is now, once a student logs in with GÉANT, they will have to have their account approved by a lab manager. This might be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at things. Because if you have 100 students, then manually approving 100 domain user requests is perhaps a tedious process. And for this case, when you have a lot of students, we have introduced the bulk user deployment functionality. However, in the near future, it's on our roadmap to simplify this process, where we can use a local GÉANT proxy so that we can register the users before even being initially logged in, and then just match their attributes. And this would allow us to put them in the relevant domain groups and the relevant domains even before they initially log in. But this is not yet live. It is on the roadmap. What is currently live is for them to log in and then be approved by a privileged user.
Okay, I see another question on the chat. Is Are containers?
Sorry, Łukasz, but I think Ivan was first.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so thank you guys. Actually, I'm quite pleasantly surprised, or so I praise you for this effort. You've done a lot of work. I see also by looking into the risks that might be might occur with resource management and so on. That's great. What I also noticed that you've been looking, and you mentioned several times Moodle, but what I was wondering actually here is, with this, GÉANT had previously also another service or another initiative which was called Up to You, with courses and so on. And I was wondering, did you also review, at least in terms of what were their problems and how were what were their challenges? Although I would also agree that it shouldn't be your task. You are providing a platform, and how the platform is used is actually this pivot that you deliver. But since you are kind of moving into this market as well with student platforms, probably it's worth looking into this thing. But they have also I noticed some strange relation that you created between domains and users, and there is this bulk upload, or what was called, with users that you create automatically. And I was in the Vojdan kind of stated there that if there is a match already, an existing user, this will not be created, it will be just matched. But what happens if there is a discrepancy, because you have a one-to-one match between domain and user, but then if someone introduces another domain for the same user that it's already present, that's a conflict, I guess, because as far as I understood, the users and the domains are one-to-one. So
yes, Ivan, thank you. So the recommendation is that the users are one-to-one, but they do not have to be. The software itself supports many-to-many mapping between domains and users. But in order to get it into context, and what we have seen is most often used in reality, is to have one user assigned to their own personal domain. But we also mentioned that if there is collaboration involved, then a given user can be part of multiple domains, and also a single domain can, of course, have multiple users.
Okay, and one last thing, just shortly. If someone creates a deployment for multiple users, or a bulk of applications for multiple users, is it the case that these users get their own instances of these applications, or they get to share these? Because sometimes probably an objective would be for people to collaborate on something, on an application. So that's the last question from my side. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions. Both scenarios are possible. What we are very much focusing on is to have the possibility of a single application for a single user. So each user to have their own application. But of course, there are no arbitrary restrictions in place for students to reuse the same application between each other. The more complex thing is to have one application per one student, because in that case you have to take care into account of the resources, the access management, and so on. But it is, of course, very much possible to share one single instance between multiple students, and this is what we had in mind when we were discussing among ourselves the collaboration options and the option for adding multiple students to a given domain, for example, if they're working on a shared project within a course.
Yeah, that complicates the configuration though, because now you need to add more users to the same application. So you have dealt with that as well.
Yes, yes, it does complicate the configuration from the network aspect in terms of what user is responsible for accessing what applications, and this is handled currently on a layer beneath NMaaS. So it is up to the guys who configure the platform to determine whether it is okay for all lab participants to have access, network access to each other's instances. There would be logins involved and so on. Or if this is not acceptable, then it is also possible to restrict access based on an application instance. But as you have correctly identified, this is currently handled on a level beneath NMaaS. There was some obscure point hidden in one of the slides where we said we were working on automation aspects. This is exactly what we have meant, to be able to handle this from NMaaS itself, so that NMaaS can dynamically reconfigure the networking rules so that each user is either allowed only to access their own instance or to access multiple additional instances as well. So this is on the roadmap, but currently it has to be handled independently of NMaaS. How we're handling it for the pilots is with some Ansible playbooks that take the same input as what is put into the CSV import in NMaaS. But of course, this is not how it should be. It should be automated. Thank you very much for the questions.
There are a few more questions in the chat, Vojdan, if you can take a look at it.
Yes, thank you, Ivana. So is it authentication with again available? Yes. Containers are shared with everyone. Well, as we have discussed now with Ivan, the application instance is hosted in a container, but it's possible for each lab participant, for each student to have their own instance. I think that's the question. If not, please let me know and I can clarify. What are the network requirements? The network requirements are flexible. What we are seeing currently is that we are using client access VPNs for each of the students. So each student has their own client access VPN profile, which is currently based on OpenVPN, but NMaaS does not discriminate. It can be used on whatever technology is already available. If the institution, for example, uses EduVPN, that's also a possibility. How the institution approaches this is up to it. What we are using are vanilla OpenVPN profiles, because in that case we can configure the IP addressing and the access rules as discussed previously on a user level. So we don't have one wide shared OpenVPN configuration profile that allows access to all instances, but we can customize this profile on a per user basis. That's why we have opted for a vanilla OpenVPN approach, but this will be revised in the near future. Apart from that, for hosting the NMaaS itself, from the Kubernetes aspect, NMaaS can work with any underlying container network interface, so any CNI plugin, any overlay network. It's up to you to deploy the Kubernetes cluster. We do have some guidelines on the documentation, but we recognize that maybe you are using some Kubernetes cloud platform or you have some managed Kubernetes solution, so we can't take everything into account. Okay, so does every organization have their own containers or they can be shared with others? If this is in terms of the application instances, again, they can be for each participant individually. If this is in terms of whether multiple institutions or organizations can use the same virtual app instance, that's also possible, because when you deploy the students, if you don't assign multiple students to one domain, they don't have any relation to each other. So even students from different organizations can log into the same platform, and thus as long as the organization has configured the domain groups accordingly, there will be no problem. Yes, you can create your own virtual app independently with your applications, of course. If you are familiar with Kubernetes, all of the applications that you see in the catalog are basically represented with simple Helm charts. So any application that already has a Helm chart can be added into NMaaS, and it can then be deployed from the web portal. Thank you, Mario, for attending. Any additional questions? Yes, we also have a brand new mailing list that's called NMaaS-users, where this is a shared mailing list. Anyone can register, and all of the emails that are sent to this mailing list are distributed among all participants, so it can be used for discussing some new ideas, suggestions, bug reports, or whatever.
Okay, if something in the chat still. Okay, thank you. There's maybe one last question to address, Vojdan, maybe for you. Is there an automatic scoring capability for use in exams?
No, so we don't have any automatic scoring capability, and we have decided to leave this aspect to other third-party applications. If you remember the first pilot that we have mentioned for the cybersecurity scenario, in that case, we are using a dedicated application called CTFD, which supports flag submission, so unique string submission from a given participant, and then you can configure how many points you would like to award for a given flag submission. But the important thing is that NMaaS is an orchestration platform. If we were to now also integrate scoring capability, we would move into many other domains, and we don't want to add additional features which are not relevant to the core NMaaS task of deploying applications. Can we use single sign-on SSO with Microsoft Entra ID? If it supports SAML, then the answer is yes. Łukasz?
Yeah, I think if there are no questions on the chat, any chance for any last comments, questions? Okay, if none, then I think we can wrap up. Thank you very much for attending. Hope to hear from you soon.